Hello, Don here. Welcome back to Iwaihime. And if this is the first time seeing this video, then go check out some the other Iwaihime videos, obviously. Subscribe if you're new, and let's just continue with this story. That's apparently this new one is explaining the past. It was said that the origins of Iwaimoto Shrine lay in a shrine priestess who married its chief god Rokugami Hiko no Mikoto 1,000 years ago. Iwaimoto Shrine was built to celebrate this wedding with a god, according to local history anyway. However, when considering the size of the village back then, it was hard to believe that any priestess would be stationed in a place so small. Thus considered more likely they were a poor farming village, and that said shrine priestess was in fact a traveling Azusa priestess.
ムツ様、なんとお礼を申し上げたらよいやら。あのままくれていたらと思うとゾッとします。本当に助かりました。
巫女様の役に立てて嬉しいよ。おばあさんの足、早く良くなるといいね。
The old woman's leg was swollen to the point where she couldn't even stand. What's more, she developed a fever, either from her wound or exhaustion. Thus, she and Susanome would stay in this village until she healed. Only visitors would be shunned in this time of famine. However, it was a different story with Azusa priestesses involved.
村長たちは巫女様たちに雨乞いをしてもらえないかと期待してるよ。
この辺りは左でどこもだいぶひどいようですね。
雨か。さもなくば食べ物を降らしてくれると助かるんだけどね。
声が届けば必ず神は答えてくださるでしょう。
The prayers of Azusa priestesses were a legitimate business. A village as poor as this couldn't possibly afford one. So it seemed the mayor and the others were hoping they could ask for help in exchange for letting the old woman stay until she recovered.
私はババ様には到底及ばぬ、まだ修行中の身ですが、私でよければこの鈴の目、ご恩返しにぜひお力添えをさせていただきたく存じます。
それはありがたいな。村のみんなも喜ぶよ。ぜひどうか雨を降らしてもらえるように神様にお願いを頼むよ。
私にできるのは口寄せです。ですので、それを頼むのは村の皆さんになりますが。
口寄せって？
私たちに伝わる神や霊と交信する秘術です。
Nowadays, people who'd inherited such talents were known as shamans. Long ago, there were many who wished to converse with the gods or their departed loved ones. Thus, these women were prized for their ability to allow such beings to possess them.
すごいね。そんな術が使えるなんて。
Speaking of shamans, have you watched the new Shaman King? It's really good. And the English dub actually has a lot of voices you might recognize if you've ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon.
どうでしょう。老女を背負ってあの急斜面を登ることができるお力の方が私はすごいと思います。
そうかな。
私にできることなど口寄せだけ。ムツ様のように上手にベッタをひっくり返すことなどできませぬ。
ムツの番だよ。頼むよムツ。
よし、僕に任せて一発逆転しちゃうぞ。
The two had been playing a game with the village children. It was a local game popular with youth known as beta. One took discs made of knitted rice straw the size of a child's palm, the beta in question, and threw them at the ground. It seemed to evolve from a game where you did the same but with old broken sandals. You won by flipping over the opponent's beta with the force of your throw. It was similar to the game Menko played in the 20th century Japan. Or like a certain game that's in Squid Game. Food was indeed short, and the adults were seized with fear at not knowing what could come next. But children were resilient no matter how dark the times. Even amidst famine, they played their hearts out.
よし、それ。
A crunching sound followed. The two betas, the one thrown and the one lying on the ground, sprung up lightly. All bettas had a flip side. The side sticking up was known as the male, while the side facing the ground was known as the female. If you could reverse the position of your opponent's betta, you won.
さっき出っ張った側だったのがへこんだ側になりましたね。
そうなれば取れたことになるんだ。
ムツは昔からベッタがすっげえうめえんだよ。ほとんどビッチャしないもんな。
Beach out refers to when you flip to your opponent's betta, but it landed in the same position it had been in before, resulting in no points.
力加減にコツがあるんだよ。無駄に力を込めても意味ないんだ。むしろ少し軽めに打つくらいがちょうどいいんだ。
Mutsu's turn came again. Look closely, he said as he threw his betta skillfully. His opponent's betta flew up only slightly, yet it perfectly flipped over. Using too much strength would have left the result purely up to luck, like flipping a coin. However, not just anyone can imitate that throw. Thanks to Atsuko, Mutsu had been the best betta player in the village since he was a child.
ミコ様はやらんの？ミコ様もやろうよ、ベッタ。
私ですか？私にもできるでしょうか？
できるよ。鈴の目様にだって簡単にできるさ。
まだ修行中の身、様などつけて呼ばれるほどではありませぬ。でも面白そうです。ぜひやらせてくださいませ。
僕のベッタを貸すよ。
ありがとうございます。わあ、これがベッタ。面白そうですね。
Everything is so nice and calm. I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm gonna say her name wrong. So many times. Suzunome's face lit up with keen curiosity, a smile befitting a maiden her age, gracing her features. Though she was a priestess, she had apparently been just another village girl as a child. She had run around hills and fields, chasing rabbits, and laid on the prairie while eating fruit from trees.
これで撃てばいいのですね。
そう。どれでも好きなのを狙って打ちつけて。
力加減が肝心ですよね。これは難しい。
最初は何も考えずにやっていいと思うよ。ベッタに当てるのだって最初は慣れがいるしね。
では参ります。
With a crack, a betta sprang into the air. The children gasped in amazement. After all, Suzunome's throw had just flipped over her opponent's betta as though it were light as a feather.
いい感じにできました。これは取れたのですか？
うん、すごいや。見事だね。
ミコ様すごいや。すごい。
取れたら連続してやれるんだ。だからまた鈴の目様が様はつけなくてもいいんだっけ？
はい、ムツ様。鈴の目とお呼びを。
そっちも様をやめてくれるなら僕もやめるよ。
はい。ではそのように。ムツ。
うん。だからもう一回鈴の目の番だよ。
わかりました。では再び参ります。てりゃ。
あ、ミコ様すっげえ。
すごいね。またひっくり返した。僕なんか最初の頃は当てるだけでも難しかったのにな。
また行きます。そりゃ。
Can you do that again?
初心者ってものすごく運がいい時ってあるよね。うん。
またひっくり返りました。また行きます。りゃ。
ミコ様すっげえ。ベッタの天才だ。ムツって実はあんまりすごくないの？ムツ大人だしな。ひょっとしたら大人なら誰でもうまいんじゃね？
ベッタってとっても面白いです。それにすごい簡単ですね。
Oh my! Oh, I just realized. Look at his eyes. He's in disbelief.
ムツ
Mutsu, the man held by the little children as a bed of master, stood there pitifully as his pride was shattered to pieces.
鈴の目勝負を申し込め。
望むところです。
A thunderous crack split the air.
あ、今のビッチャですよね。ビッチャビッチャ。
力みすぎた。
では今度は私の番ですね。参ります。
Another thunderous crack followed.
ニコ様すげえ、天才だ。ムツも頑張れよ。オイラたちの大将だろ。
あー、今ビッチャービッチャビッチャー。
ビッチャじゃないです。最初からメスでした。
ビッチャじゃないよ。ニコ様が正しいよ。ムツ、見苦しいぞ。
さあ、あと1枚ですね。これをひっくり返せば子供たちの大将ムツの誇りも粉々ですね。
このまま俺がベッタの名人に上り詰めるまでの苦労を全て打ち砕く気か。
ムツ、一体いつからこの遊びがこの村だけのものと錯覚していた？
鈴の目、貴様、この遊びやり込んでいるな。
答える必要はない。
Suzunome's beta let out a sharp crack as it struck the ground, and the final beta flew high into the sky. Would Mutsu's beta flip, or would it be a bicha?
完璧な力加減、完璧な跳躍、完璧な回転。ムツ、破れたり。
この状況で勝利を確信するとは少子。どうやら鈴の目、貴様の村には伝わらなかったらしいな。ベッタ界に伝えられる究極の奥義を。
何？
All of a sudden, Mutsu caught his falling beta and threw it at Suzunome's.
これぞ超絶究極非奥義、スターダストシート何がおかしい。
この地ではその技をそう呼ぶか。だが我が村では奥義なれど究極奥義にあらず。それを打ち負かす真の奥義が編み出されていたことを知れ。
Suzunome jumped high, higher than the beta sent flying up, and Mutsu started a shot.
新進王究極絶対奥義ムツ、貴様の腐敗神話への引導、ここでくれてやるわ。くらえ、クライマックスハレーストライク。
What are these names? The beta held as it sliced through the sound barrier, and with a wham it smashed into the air with great force, shooting clouds of dust into the air. Who was the winner? Was it Mutsu or Suzunome? The two of them landed one after another, and a few seconds later, their betas landed on the ground for good. Only now would the result be revealed.
相打ちですか？
いや、違うね。君だけビッチャだ。
いいえ、あなたもビッチャです。
違うね。鈴の目だけがビッチャだ。
違います。ムツだけがビッチャです。
違うね。鈴の目だけがビッチャだよ。ビッチャビッチャ。
子供たちに判定してもらいましょう。勝ったのはどっちですか？
僕だよね。見てたでしょみんな。
すごすぎてよくわかんなかった。
Oh. The adult thing to do in this situation would be to call it a draw butt.
鈴の目がビッチャだよ。
いいえ、ムッツだけがビッチャです。
鈴の目がビッチャビッチャビッチャ。
違います、ムッツです。ビッチャビッチャビッチャビッチャ。
A young man and woman were shouting "Bitcha" at each other back and forth in the village square. Villagers had gathered from a distance to see what was going on. Some were laughing while others grinned and awkwardly looked away.
いいえ、あなたがビッチャです。このビッチャビッチャ。
そっちがビッチャだよ。ビッチャのビッチャビッチャビチャ。
若いっていいわね。ムツも年頃だし。
最近の若いもんは大胆じゃの。
Eventually, the two of them finally realized how foolish they were acting. They suddenly blushed and became lost for words. Not knowing what to do, they faced the villagers surrounding them and bowed. And they ran off as fast as they could. They wanted to find some hole to hide in and would go as far as needed to find one. The pair started laughing, threw themselves onto the prairie. They looked up and watched as the sky slowly but surely changed from orange to violet. The two talked about themselves until the sun set. Aww. Suzunome had always been destined to be an Azusa priestess. Apparently, she was born and raised as an ordinary village girl until she was discovered by a band of Azusa priestesses and began training with them. She'd been certain that she'd developed a fully composed personality, one completely devoted to serving those above. But as the day's events had proven, the part of her that loved playing games still remained deep down.
ありがとう、ムツ。こんなに目いっぱいはしゃいだのは本当に久しぶりです。すごい楽しかった。
僕も楽しかったよ。僕の場合はまあいつもはしゃいでいるけれど。
私の村ではベッタではなくバッタと呼んでいたのですが。
Beta? Not beta.
まさかバッタの神の生まれ変わりとまで言われた私と腕前の白昼する人に出会えるなんて。
世の中って広いね。いろんな人がいるんだね。鈴の目が羨ましいよ。いろんな土地に旅に行って見聞を広げられるのが。
でもちょっぴり疲れます。最初の頃はいろいろと興味深くて面白かったですが、ババ様のような弱いになっても旅暮らしかと思うとちょっぴり嫌になる時もあります。荷物は重いですし、旅路も険しいし、ババ様と二人きりの旅なら気も楽ですが、年の近い巫女がもっといると、女同士だといろいろ疲れることもありまして。
あずさ巫女は荷物持ちの人足とかいないの？
裕福な方々ですと荷物持ちや用心棒の男手を連れ歩かれることもあるようです。
へえ。あずさ巫女にも裕福とか裕福じゃないとかそういうことがあるんだ。
Though known collectively as Azusa priestesses, there were in fact a wide variety of them. The most common types were groups hired by large villagers to come visit them at fixed intervals. But there were also those who acted as missionaries, trying to spread the word of the gods to more backwater villages. There were also those who traveled with peddlers, as well as those who worked as women of easy virtue. Suzunome and her companion had once belonged to a large group, but being in such a large party created a lot of discord. Tired of that, Suzumone had left them along with Granny, the woman she considered her mentor, and began a journey with her, which resulted in her meeting Mutsu.
やはり老婆と若い女だけの旅では危ないですね。たまたまムツに助けてもらえたから良いようなものを。
そうだね。この辺りは熊や狼が出ることも多いし。
熊や狼ならまだしも、もし出会っていたのが野党だったらと思うと。
それは怖いね。
ムツみたいな人が一緒にいてくれたら荷物持ちも楽になるし、いざという時も頼れるでしょうに。
いいね。僕も鈴の目について行って旅がしたいな。
Of course, they both knew it was a pipe dream. In this era, villagers had to prepare food not just for themselves, but for the annual tribe, too. A man in the prime of his life like Mutsu was valuable to his family. If he were gone, then it would fall upon his elderly parents to do the work in his place.
僕も旅がしたいな。
私もかつては同じ夢を思い描いておりました。
いざやってみると楽しくない？
相手次第でしょうか。気の合わない相手との旅は苦痛ですが、気の合う相手との旅だったならどれほど楽しいことなのでしょうね。
Two looked into each other's eyes. From that alone, they could tell what they were feeling, what they both wanted. However, it could never be. The old woman's leg wasn't healing quickly, so Suzunome would likely remain around for a while. But eventually she'd have to return to the road. Mutsu couldn't join her. Fate dictated that he'd have to watch her leave.
旅に戻ったらもう二度と鈴の目とは会えないのかな。
きっと必ずこの村にまた戻ってきます。
戻ってもまた旅に出ちゃうんだよね。
それがあずさみ湖のお役目ですから。私たちを求める人々はあちこちにいます。その方々を私は救済しなくてはなりません。
そうだよね。
Mutsu knew he couldn't be selfish and say that he wanted her all to himself. When she saw his face dim slightly, Suzunome gave an encouraging smile.
だから旅に出ても何度出ても何度でもこの村に戻ってきます。いつの日にかムツが私と一緒に旅に出られるようになる日までずっと。
鈴の目。
The sky was painted over in the colors of night by this point. Under it, the pair silhouettes appeared to overlap. From that day onward, the two continued their tryst, making the most of their limited time. Journeys were harsh in this era. No matter how much she promised to see him again, they knew there was no guarantee of that. Maybe I should just stay in this village. Suzunome entertained that notion many a time. But there were people counting on her. People who eagerly waited the arrival of an Azusa priestess. And of course, there was no way she could abandon the journey and leave her elderly companion to continue it alone. Mutsu wouldn't dare tell her he wanted her to abandon her noble mission and take her for his own either. He put his faith in the reunion and vowed to not waste a single moment of their time together. Even when the moon shone bright under them, the pair did not separate. The old woman's leg wasn't getting any better. Perhaps the strain of the long journey had caught up with her. She'd broken out into a fever and was showing no signs of recovery. It pained Suzunome's heart to know that they had brought even more mounts to feed to a starving village. Picking up on that, the village elders asked her to pray for rain.
わかりました。お引き受けさせていただきます。
ありがたや。
ただ私のできるのは雨乞いではなく口寄せです。 この地を守る産砂神を私の体に下ろすことしかできません。
ということは、六神様を。
Oh, I'm already seeing where this is going.
わしらは六神様と話せるちゅうのか？
つまり雨を降らせてもらえるかどうかは、僕たちが六神様の心に届くお願いができるかどうかということだね。
そうなります。でも皆様の敬う気持ちと本当に困っているという気持ちがあったなら必ず届くでしょう。
そんなことして大丈夫なのかね。
The villagers were abuzz with fear and anxiety. They were daunted by the prospect of having to speak to a being so awe-inspiring as their very own god. The mayor calmed them down. They had no other choice. Without rain, they couldn't count on the autumn harvest. But if they knew they just had to hold out until autumn, they could find hope again.
頼みますぞ、巫女様。
Oh, so that's the mayor.
かしこまりました。
There was an abandoned temple near the village. Now you may be wondering why someone would build a temple in such a remote location. Well, some distinguished monks came from the capital and mentioned that it would be the perfect spot for a temple. That's all there was to it. But right before the temple was completed, part of it burned down under suspicious circumstances. It seemed it hadn't been very popular. The bad luck didn't end there. At some point, the virtuous monks collapsed from illness. As a result, they departed the land, leaving only an unused temple behind. Thus, in the village, that temple was the most fitting place for divine rituals. On the night of the ritual, the villagers gathered there out of curiosity. Before long, a god would appear and speak before them. It was awe-inspiring, and yet something no one ever wished to have to resort to again. As the anxious villagers clamored around the main temple hall, Suzunome began the solemn ritual. She chanted the prayer aloud to summon Rokugami Hiko no Mikoto. Next, she took out a small bow known as an Azusayumi, a spirit bow, and grabbed the string. Using something akin to a small pole, she strung the bow until it was taut, not like she was about to fire it, but rather like playing an instrument. The hall resounded with a shrill noise, the likes of which had never been heard before.
本当に六神様を呼び出せるんかの？
Who knows?
静かに。彼女の邪魔になるよ。
The whispers of the villagers died down one after another by that majestic sound. Before long, the air was filled with an austere presence befitting the advent of a god. Tsunome, who had been putting her all into stringing the bow, feeling lowered head, began shaking from head to toe. Her eyes widened as she convulsed and started groaning. The villagers, fearing she might be possessed by an evil spirit, could only watch with bated breaths. And then she went limp. Quietly, she slowly rose to her feet, and her demeanor completely different from before. When she turned around, her expression was no longer of the sweet young woman everyone had seen mere minutes prior. A long silence followed. No one dared speak, least of all blink or twitch. Eventually, she broke the silence.
我こそは六神彦の巫女なるぞ。ひれ伏すがよいぞ、人の子らよ。
Her intensity was not that of Susanoo. There was no more doubt about it that God now dwelled within her body.
おお、六神様。我らはお山のふもとに住まいます村の民たちでございます。
The mayor humbled himself as he informed Rokugami Hiko no Mikoto of the village's plight.
我は雨をすべる神にあらず。雨の恵みをもたらすことはかなわぬのだ。
おお、それでは雨は一体いつになったら？
雨雲は遠い。必ず恵みの雨は降ろうが、
まだ遠い。
秋の実りはどうでしょう。
幾ばくかの実りを迎えるであろう。それをよく蓄え、大切に食い伸ばしたなら、必ずや村は救われるであろう。
There would be crops in the fall. Everyone looked at each other with relief at this beacon of hope. Now that they had hope for the future, their concerns turned to the present naturally.
しかし六神様、私たちはすでに日々の糧にも苦労しております。このままでは村人たちは次々に弱り、病に蝕まれていくことでしょう。秋まで待つことはとても難しいことです。どうかどうか我らに日々の糧をお与えください。
お前たちは我を敬い、我が山に属せの汚れを持ち込まぬよう、よく今日まで努めた。その労をねぎらうことはやぶさかではない。
何卒お慈悲を。
次の満月の晩より7日間、我が眷属の鹿たちを村に使わす。その肉を村人たちに分け与えよ。さすれば秋の実りまでを食いつなぐことができるであろう。
And with those words, Suzunome's body slowly went limp until she collapsed to the ground. Rukugami Hiko no Mikoto had vowed a charity unto the villagers. And then came the night of the full moon. The god's envoy appeared before the waiting villagers. It was a creature of legend said to live in the Forbidden Mountain, the Golden Deer. The villagers were rendered speechless by its heavenly appearance. The buck's antlers were strong and firm like the branches of a great tree. Their solid gold glitter shone around the village like a scene straight out of a dream. Its eyes gleamed red like rubies, and though it was a deer, one couldn't help but kneel before its divine presence. Its fur was also gold, sparkling brilliantly with each movement of its body. It was the emissary of Rokugaki Mihiko no Mikoto. I think I'm getting better at saying it. Rumored to extend one's life form by the mere sight of it. Every last villager prostrated themselves before it. Izunome slowly walked forward and spoke to it. Before long, she turned around and conveyed its message to the villagers.
神の鹿はこう仰せられています。我が肉を剥ぎ、それを煙でいぶして蓄えよ。需要に富し我が肉は一口で飢えを癒すであろう。そして我が金色の角、我が金色の毛皮を剥ぎて金子に変えて蓄えよ。それにて食い伸ばし、秋の実りを待つがよかろう。
For the next 7 days, they were visited by a new golden deer each night. During his they were told the villagers smoked the meat and stored it. They presented the golden antlers and furs to nobles from the capital and managed to exchange them for vast sums of money. With those, the villagers were saved from famine and managed to keep their home alive.
そんな昔話があったんですね。
だからこの土地の古いお年寄りは絶対に鹿の肉を食べないの。尊い神様の使いだからって言ってね。まあこの平成日本で鹿の肉なんてなかなか口にできるものじゃないけれどね。神社への通りの土産物屋さんに名物鹿まんじゅうとか鹿納豆とかいろいろ売っているけれど、食べ物に神聖な鹿の名を冠することに眉を潜めるお年寄りも少しはいるのよ。
飢饉を鹿の神様に救ってもらったことをこうしてずっと感謝し続けてるんですね。
というのはすべて後世の人たちが都合よく再編集した作り話なの。
Wait, that wasn't exactly how it happened.
作り話？
そう、 そもそもこの神社は祝い元なんてめでたい名前なんかじゃなかった。本当の名前は呪い元神社。
呪いって人を呪うの呪いですか？
そう、人を呪うの呪いと書く呪い元神社。外から人が来ることのない時代にはみんな気にしなかったそうなんだけどね。江戸時代に街道が通ることになるとマイナスイメージを気にして名前を変えようということになってね。呪い元神社の名前は似た字で縁起のいい祝い元神社に改められたの。
Iwai. Sword celebration. Oh, okay.
この頃に呪い元神社の由来についての物語も改編が行われたわ。その結果が先ほど話した昔話。
改変ってことは元の話とどこかが変えられているんですか？
Whew.
変えられているというよりはしょられているというべきね。
Bridged it.
飢饉が起こり神の鹿がやってきて村を救ってくれた。この後の物語がきれいにはしょられているの。
Oh.
つまりさっきの昔話はあれで終わりではない。
I kind of figured it didn't end there.
そういうこと。神の鹿がやってきて村人たちは無事に飢饉を乗り越えた。それだけじゃ終わらなかったってことね。
お
Did they get greedy?
ところでこの神社のご神体なんだけど、神様のおわす山でもなければ村を救った鹿でもない。なんだと思う？
想像もつかないです。
答えから言うと盆栽よ。
A bell. Huh. Wait a minute. A bell? Didn't I break one of the Didn't our characters who's moved got one of the characters, one of the girls out of a bell in one of the dreams? Like everything is starting to connect. Oh, wow.
盆栽？
平たく言えばお寺の釣り鐘のことよ。大昔この村にあったという灰寺に放置された釣り鐘。それが祝い元神社のご神体なの。
どうしてそんなものが？
神社のパンフレットには神に感謝して人々が奉納したなんてもっともらしいことが書かれているけど、普通に考えれば辻褄が合わないわよね。
This was a shrine for worshipping the deer god known as Mihiko no Mikoto. And there was a legend that said his deer saved people from famine. But then why had the shrine been named after a curse? Why would a sacred shintai be a hanging bell from an abandoned temple? It didn't add up. Something was missing, just like Miss Hinakata was alluding to.
戦前の郷土史収集家が研究していたの。その人の資料を見つけるのは苦労したわ。神社の神主を代々務める黒髪家は迫害と呼べるほどの圧力をかけてその研究をもみ消したのだから。
And now I'm realizing why Suzumu, still not completely sure of why the whole ancestry thing with Mutsu, but it makes more sense with Kurakami because it's her shrine. Why she'd be cursed, because she's part of the family for the shrine. So that makes sense, but why Suzumu is my question. Why Suzumu? How is Suzumu wrapped up in this besides being ancestry to Mutsu?
この土地の縁起の悪い伝説を蒸し返されることを好まなかったということでしょうか？
おそらくね。黒髪家にとっては自称研究家などという人間の好奇にさらされ無用な注目を浴びたくなかったでしょうし。
何があったんですか？
人間の欲とそれに対する神の怒り、そして その神の怒りすらも上回る人間のおぞましさよ。
People were saved by the meat from the sacred deer. The capital's nobles were enamored with the golden antlers and furs and paid handsomely for them. The people managed to live modestly off of that and survive the famine. However, things didn't end there. A single bite from the deer meat cured their hunger, but man's desires knows no bounds. Once their desire for food was sated, their minds being occupied with a desire for wealth. The village elders were awed by the unimaginable riches they'd earned from trading the gold antlers and furs. What's more, the nobles had asked them, "Do you have any more?" If they brought more golden antlers and fur, they could sell them for a hefty price. The villagers had only lived modestly so far because they'd had no other choice. But faced with the prospects of earning a king's ransom, their greed drowned out their gratitude toward their god. Did they get greedy? I knew it was going to turn into something involving greed. Oh, Mutsus was against it, though. It seems like be against it, though.
あの山にはまだまだ金の鹿がおるはずじゃ。
あれだけのお山じゃ100頭はいるに違いね
え。でもお山を侵せばタタリがあるって。
タタリなんぞ怖いもんか。
そもそも六神様なんて本当におるかもわからんぞ。
んだ旅の巫女が口を接したらたまたま金の鹿が村に迷い込んできただけかもしれん。
Oh God, what are they gonna do? It is in man's nature to look to the future over the past. Future prospects are far more important than offering thanks to that which has come and gone. Up until now, the villagers had feared and revered the mountain as Rokugami Hiko no Mikoto's sacred home, yet they'd completely forgotten their dutiful thanks and were wearing their greed on their sleeves. A picture scroll from the 17th century obtained by the aforementioned researchers told a true story. It depicted the gruesome slaughter that had unfolded on the mountain, the hunting of the golden deer. Here's some irony. What word would you get when you combined the characters for gold and deer? The answer is massacre. Oh, wow. That,兄
上様、どうかお考え直しを。
Oh no, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me.
そうですとも。人間たちのためにそこまでをされる必要はありますまい。
そうはいかぬ。我らは互いを敬い、距離を保ちつつも共生せねばならぬ。
なれど、日照りで辛いのは我らも同じ。
なぜに我らのみが人間に施さねばならぬかわかりませぬ。
人間たちはよく我らを敬い、この飢饉にあっても我らの土地を侵さなかった。それに対し見返りがなくば、我らへの敬いも薄れようというもの。神よの時代はすでに終わって久しい。我らは滅ぶべき存在だ。しかし彼らの祖先は我らの地を侵さぬことを約束してくれたのだ。何の見返りも求めず。
しかしその見返りに我らの身を捧げるなど。
さようです。兄上様がどうして人間どもに。
話し合って決めたことだ。
Yeah, the sister.
我を筆頭に年長の者7人を人里に送る。
Maybe sisters.
それで彼らは秋の実りまで十分に食いつなぐことができるであろう。我の血肉は彼らのものだけにはならぬ。 我らへの敬いを新たにし、我らの安寧にもつながるのだ。
I'm just
兄
sad.
上様。
出産を間近にしている者もおろう。7人減ればその分多く食え、父の出も良くなるはずだ。我ら亡き後、この山を頼むぞ。
兄上様、誓って一族の繁栄をお約束いたしまする。
But they could not keep that promise. Over 7 days, 7 sacrifices were sent, believing they were fulfilling their duty. But they had no way of knowing their sacrifices would be in vain. They could have never imagined that they were stirring man's greed even further. Oh, man. Don't show me a freaking blood moon. It happened on a night where a moon appeared. Of fucking course. As desolate winds blew, the villagers carried torches all passed over the stream to the forbidden mountain. That mere act sent the creatures living there into a frenzy, for all of them had wholeheartedly believed that the humans would never cross the stream. The mob roared as they roused the animals. The golden deer instantly understood the situation from the commotion, and learned that their trust had been betrayed. Both Suzanome and Mitsu had been opposed to it, but their words had fallen on deaf ears of those blinded by greed. Since the village was taken care of her, Suzanome could do little to protest, and since Mitsu was a member of the village, he was unable to fight against their shared conviction. Back in those days, their village was your family and their fate was yours. Opposing them would mean getting both you and your family ostracized, and Mitsu knew that. So even though he didn't want to, he had no choice but to partake in the mountain hunt. Okay, now we know why Suzumu is a part of this, because Mutsu ended up having... It's because he didn't oppose. Is that the reason? Because while the others were just freely doing it, he was opposed, and yet he still did it. So that's probably why he's the one that's more cursed, because he didn't do enough to try to stop it, is what I'm assuming. The creatures of the mountain scrambled in fear down the annual trails on the opposite slope. There, they were caught in large nets. It was an ambush pincer attack designed to lure them into traps around them a pole. Of course, what the villagers truly wanted were the golden deer. But in this time of famine, they didn't mind taking whatever they could catch. They planned to hunt the whole mountain dry. The agitated animals were caught by the herd and trapped one for another. Dying screams of their slaughter resounded without any end in sight. The golden deer looked down on this horrifying scene.
なんということなのか。
姉上様。
Sister,
もうこの地にはとどまれませぬ。
I accidentally, sorry.
この地を捨てましょう。今ならまだ北の谷から逃げられます。
しかし、北の谷は人の子らの地だ。我らの地にはあらず。
Is it any coincidence that there's 4 deer here? And including Toei, there's 4 girls. Think about that.
人の子が金を
4
破った
doe,
以
I
上、
should say, not deer.
我らがそれに従う道理はありますまい。
They're all doe, female. We have 4 girls that are getting possessed of some kind. I mean,
さようです。彼らが我らの地を侵すように、我らが彼らの地を侵したとて、誰に咎められましょう。
なりませぬ。姉上様。彼らが金を破ったからといって我らまで破れば、それは我らも同じに出したも同然。我らは神代の時代より生きし誇り高き一族。その誇りを失うことは許されませぬ。
who knows, maybe I'm wrong about that whole thing.
し
しゅうございます。これでは何のために兄上様たちが命を捧げたのかわかりませぬ。
人の子を信じた兄上様たちが不憫でなりませぬ。
あれは人の子にあらず人の鬼、人鬼じゃ。我らは金を破らぬ。破りで沢を越えるは人鬼に脱するも同じ。我らの誇りが人鬼どもの邪悪によっても汚されぬことを教えてやろうぞ。
いたぞ、金の鹿の群れじゃ。
囲め囲め、一匹も逃すでないぞ。
The villagers' greedy eyes gleamed through the darkness, looking exactly like those of demons. The herd of golden deer suddenly took off, scattered across the mountain, but their golden fur shone too brightly in the moonlight. They couldn't escape the avaricious glares of the man-demons. One deer collapsed in exhaustion, one fell, broke its leg. One by one they were captured. The final members of the herd were cornered at the stream. If they crossed the stream, they could likely flee to safety. But that was the humans' land. They had gained that land in exchange for promising they wouldn't trespass upon any others. And so the golden deer kept their pride to the bitter end. They were all captured with their backs to the stream.
バカな鹿どもじゃ。こいつら沢を越えられぬぞ。
They're being prideful, you dick.
わしらが踏み入れるのをいいことに、親までぬくぬくしておった報いじゃな。
一網打尽じゃぞ。
The deer's legs were bound and the humans carried them upside down on long poles. It was a disgraceful end to the sacred deers who lived since the age of gods.
これだけいればわしらはみんな大金持ちじゃ。
メスの毛並みもなかなかではないか。毛皮に傷をつけぬように気をつけるのじゃぞ。
The deer were hung in succession over a skinning table set up in the village. Next, the villagers smashed them over the head and killed them. There were no kender to the fawns either. Even the newborns were slaughtered mercilessly. Families were forced to watch their own children murdered one after another as they waited for their own turn to come. It is said that the deer shed bitter tears, but no extant records speculated on their feelings.
我らはどうなっても構いませぬ。せめて子供らにはどうかお慈悲を。お慈悲を賜まれれば我が身はどうなろうと決してお恨み申しませぬ。どうかお慈悲。
They smashed their skulls with countless swings of their axes.
ケンケンよく吠える鹿じゃ。あい。おれ、次。
人鬼たちめ、この仕打ち、我らは永遠に忘れぬぞ。
Now let's count.
こいつらの肉、あれだけのご利益があるんじゃ。血にもあるんではないかの。
This is kind of the last straw for them, I guess. Pulling out on that pride, and this kind of broke it to the point of cursing them, I guess.
なめたら無病息災のご利益があるやもしれぬな。
Blades were thrust into their defenseless bellies. Blood gushed out of those aching wounds. The villagers lapped away and licked it up, staining their lips foul crimson.
まずい。こんなものにご利益があるとは思えぬわ。
殺せ。これ以上我が身を恥ずかしめることは許さぬ。
早く肉をいぶしてまた食らいつきたいもんじゃ。あの美味思い出すだけでよだれがこぼれるわ。
The axe was raised and the moon was split.
姉上様、お先に。
The sound of a skull shattering resounded, followed by the hiss of blood gushing.
あと一匹じゃ。
わしらのすぐ近くにこんなお宝がどっさり眠っとったなんてな。
The final doe had been forced to see all that transpired. The whole clan being captured, family, young and old alike, being slaughtered. Their fur skinned, their flesh carved up. The ecstasy of the man-demons at these acts, their expressions something not of this world. And last but not least, the axe coming down on her own head. Her life was coming to an end, and all the while she witnessed her adorable siblings being skinned. She wept bitterly and unleashed one final scream.
おれ、人間ども、人にどもめ。
So it wasn't the dear God that is necessarily cursing them. It was the does. So I was right. It is the does that are not the God itself, but it's the does. And I don't blame them now. I honestly don't blame them.
我こそは、我らこそは、この地の産砂神、六神彦の御事なり。
Okay, it still says that it is the God, but
この恨み、我らは永遠に忘れることはなし。必ずや天の罰を与えるであろう。我らの怒りに恐れおののくがいい。そして永遠に。
やかましい鹿じゃ。
I know it's a bad place to stop this, but I've been recording for an hour. So we'll find out what's gonna happen there in the next one. But yeah, we're ending it right there on a cliffhanger. Because I don't know how much more of that I could handle right now. That was part, I don't know what it is, 25 maybe, of Iwaihime. We learned the truth of this land and learned the truth of this curse. I'm probably going to learn more truth in the next episode of it, whenever I record it. So, man, that one, it started off so happy, didn't it? And now I'm just depressed even more than I normally am. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Well, actually, no, hope you didn't enjoy all that senseless slaughter, but hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, check out other videos I've done. And see you next time, I guess. Hopefully. Bye-bye.